Welcome to Ascend TV, live on the autism spectrum. I'm Keith Halperin,
And I'm Will Burnick.
and this week our guest is Chris Williams, co-founder of the Neurodiversity Group at Square. But before we begin, Will, what's with your shirt today?
Well, this week's shirt is my new Italy shirt. My mom and sister got this shirt when they went to Italy. They had fun. They took lots of pictures,
And hopefully that's lots of good Italian food.
and maybe even saw the Italian landmarks.
Indeed. Excellent. Well, we'll now begin. Will, would you introduce Chris and discuss your questions?
Gladly. Today's guest is Chris Williams from on the Autism Square. Chris, first, could you tell us about Square? How many employees? Where is it located? What does it do?
Square is a company that provides financial services to people like you and me, and to businesses. And the kind of financial services they provide are essentially just services that help people or businesses up into the economy, usually with a lot of efficiency, mobility, and a lot of easy use. I mean, there's a lot of utility there as well. For example, if anyone has an iPhone or any kind of mobile device of that nature, Square has these little readers you can attach to it, and if you're just looking to make a transaction with someone, but what that little reader does is it helps you take like a debit card or a credit card payment. And that can happen anywhere. I mean, you're not tethered to a device or tethered to like a more confined ecosystem of financial services payments, like companies used to provide. And so Square has been making moves in this industry, or kind of even creating this industry in a way, the last 6 or 7 years or so, 10 years. And they've got a lot of unique products along the way. They've gotten to right around probably 2,500, 3,000 employees, somewhere in that mix. And they have locations all over the world. Specifically, they're headquartered here in San Francisco, but they've got a lot of business in St. Louis, and all sorts of international offices too. I mean, they just launched in Japan and had some really great ad campaigns there. So Square is becoming much more of a global company along the way.
Tell us about your Neurodiversity Group at Square.
Really, it's just a collection of people. We have about anywhere from 70 to 100 folks in our Slack channel. And what that is, I mean, is just, where all sorts of conversation around neurodiversity is happening. I mean, a lot of times it can just be articles that are being referenced. Maybe someone has a question about, ADHD or, narcolepsy or just kind of any of the conditions that other, employees experience, or maybe their families experience. Maybe, I mean, there's just so many threads of conversation, so many threads of dialogue, and, just kind of community building happening just in that little channel itself. Beyond that, we have had all sorts of kind of regular and irregular meetings along the way. We've got a group of individuals who are much more devoted to building our infrastructure within the company, and what we've done is, we're really, Square gives their communities some leeway to really build something. They give you a lot of fertile ground, I guess, to grow within. And so we've been able to hold these events, and open them to the public, where we've been able to educate people about autism, educate people about schizophrenia, gather a community along the way. And we're also finding all sorts of other communities to partner with at Square too. We have like a veterans group there, maybe a group for people who are Muslim, or Christian or Jewish, women who are engineers. I mean, there's just all sorts of communities there that are we are able to be having dialogue with right now, and we're kind of building events outward as well there too. I mean, so there's just all sorts of things I could tell you that we're developing internally and building community with employees. But we're also, we really have our eye on orienting and aligning Square more in the direction of creating these environments, and they're already pretty good. I mean, but really strengthening the kind of environment and strengthen the kind of professional, maybe a sphere they offer to employees in their divergence. Maybe through hiring programs or through more coordinated efforts to provide a more suitable environment. There's any number of directions you can go into, and so that's been really valuable to have these conversations. And there's just all sorts of plates we're spinning right now. All sorts of things I feel positive about what our community is doing right now.
Tell us about your own journey in the autism community.
Yeah, so my own journey's been really exciting. I mean, it's only been a few years. So I mean, if you like, if you told me like 3 or 4 years ago, if you'd come to me and said, "Hey, I'd be talking to you, Will, right here on this, this fantastic program, about being, having this journey through autism," that'd be a bit of a record scratch for me. Like what is this point of divergence? And so, but it's so exciting too. So my journey, it's really based around my family, and my daughter in particular. All of my children, I've got 3: a boy who's 9, and twin girls who are 8. One of my twin girls in particular, she showed some really significant support needs. Some really strong traits and qualities, you could say, when she was quite young, and so that got us on the road to exploring, well, what's going on with her? Why is she developing differently? And all the things we're learning along the way. I come to find not only are is she autistic, but my other 2 children are too. That I am as well. I mean, it's really just been this extraordinary lens of insight that I have to most people. You kind of feel like you have the decoder ring and that used to come in the cereal boxes. But in this case, it's like it's real. It's like this this lens that you can look at other people, and it gives you this whole spectrum to understand them within. Neurodiversity has been this really kind of powerful, a set of bifocals, that I have on. So my journey there has been wanting to understand, who my daughter is and how I can care for her and provide her a future. It's better understanding how I can better understand myself, and advocate and build a future for myself and my other kids. And then it's also just been this real sense of community building with people like yourself. Where we come to encounter each other, and I'm feeling like, hey, this is profound, like this, almost like this implicit connection. I mean, and I could elaborate more on that, but like, I feel like I've kind of like found my tribe.
Chris, can you tell us what prompted you and your other co-founders to create the Neurodiversity Group at Square?
I was describing my family. We all have family situations, professional situations. I mean, just the narratives of our lives. I think that when we got to that point, and we were really having these like wonderful conversations on this community channel, it just felt like all of us really realized the power, I think, in going further. Square, they're really big on communities. I was talking about those earlier, and so they essentially announced a period in which you could apply to become an official Square ERG. And just,
I'm sorry, what's an ERG?
And an ERG is an employee resource group. I won't say employee rights group, but often they might fight for the same things. They're an employee resource group that might be built around serving a particular community. And that community can be defined in any number of ways. People from different areas of the world, or different faiths, or different genders. So these resource groups kind of are ways employees can build community internally, around that structure, and they can do all sorts of things. Like for instance, right now there's this wonderful exhibit around the Stonewall riots, in Square, done by our Squares ERG. So there's this terrific community around that community, our terrific employee community around that that group of individuals. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that Square had this open period to apply, and it just seems so right this is really ground that we can develop this community and provide all sorts of, whether it's awareness, education, acceptance. I mean, just all of the themes that you kind of constantly look around at the world and think, hey, like I'd really like to change the world for the better in these ways. This is really an opportunity to do that at a company, and that was just an exciting proposition, and I think just roll that ball down the hill. You know.
Jennifer, I understand you have a question for Chris.
Yes, so do you feel like the powers that be, the higher ups, whatever you call them, as an institution, are they supportive of you, or do you feel like you have to fight them to get what you need?
Generally, I mean, they I think have a little bit of spirit of, helping, looking out for marginalized people. I mean, giving them spaces to build communities within, or giving them spaces to grow and to thrive. And so it really just kind of feels like it's in the DNA of the company a little bit. And I'm not that sounds like I'm, doing some like sales pitch, but I mean, I'm really not. I mean, these communities are beautiful, just organization. I mean, during a lot of the stuff going on politically right now, like the travel ban and stuff like that, the Muslim community there is doing profound organizational work. I mean, bringing in people to really speak to all these legal experiences that these people are suffering through. I mean, there's just any number of ways that these communities really have a room to provide their message, room to attract people, room to do things that educate internally but also externally. I mean, I think Square has just been, my answer really is just like an exuberant yes, that they provide an environment that sustains this kind of community growth.
This week we're being joined by Ascend's co-founder, Camilla Bixler, and I understand that you have a question for Chris as well.
Yeah, Chris, I'm interested in finding out about how your autistic traits help you on the job.
Well, my autistic traits, I guess. I mean, I've got a cornucopia of them, but like I'm really quite good at, I think, organizing data sets, and also in my particular position, at any time, and I'll try not to be too precise here, but at any time I have to look at things like a particular event, a transaction maybe, in the lens of how does this affect me from a legal standpoint? How does this affect me from an accounting standpoint, an HR standpoint? I mean, there's just any number of layers that you're switching through, and in my role, I have to think about all of those things simultaneously, and I think my particular traits or qualities allow me to do that pretty well. In terms of organize that data, both in terms of like creating like libraries and tools and things like that I can utilize or other employees around me can access, but also just mentally I can kind of swirl all those plates, spin all those plates, in my head at once for this kind of role. It's just. It also, there's all sorts of kind of arcane things to know about stock administration, like just like all you weird little tax, or accounting rules that I think if you have the brain, like when I listen to like a musical artist like Tom Waits, for example, like when I first heard his songs, I'm like, oh my god, this guy's amazing. I mean, and so I listened to like 20 of his records in probably like 3 days, and like I mean, and just it's stuff like that where like I think my autistic like ways I absorb information. The kind of information, arcane information around this field is something I'm really kind of geeked out by. And I think being excited about what I do also helps me do my job pretty well.
I'd like to go to the other side of that, too,
sure.
and ask you, do you need any accommodation on the job?
Oh, I would say so. Sometimes I get migraines or just other kind of sensory reactions. It can be like strong lights. These aren't too bad, but it might be like a particular flavor of light. Maybe it's a very crowded room. There's just different things that bring on like almost like these physically uncomfortable reactions that I really kind of have to look out for. And one thing I also do too is I'm not the most punctual person. I get I think I probably have some blend of ADHD in the mix of this as well. And but I mean that could easily be but I guess what I'm saying is it's hard for me to be on time. My executive function in a variety of ways that I can extrapolate from that. I struggle with things sometimes, and I definitely think I've found that my managers or other coworkers sometimes don't always interpret that correctly, or they give me less benefit of the doubt than they may realize they should. no, I certainly need accommodations in those areas. I let everyone know now, that I'll forget their name and face pretty quickly, because if I don't, they're probably gonna think I'm rude the next time I meet them. Just little things like that.
Yeah, is your
Great.
company flexible about what time you're allowed to start work as long as you put in the 8 hours a day, or do they have a rule that you must be at work by this time and not a nanosecond later or you get punished?
I think there's probably been I've gotten a little bit of talking to at times here or there, but I think the more that I've been understood, the more they understand that that 10 minutes a day, it doesn't necessarily, it doesn't profoundly impact my performance the other 7 hours and 50 minutes if we're talking 8-hour increments, But I guess what I'm trying to say is that Square is, in the position I'm in, is much more. I think as long as I deliver on the role, as long as I serve my function fairly well, I've got the liberty to serve it how best I can, if that makes sense.
That's what's most important, the quality of your
Sure.
work, not how much time you spend glued to a chair.
Yes.
What do you do? What do the rest of your coworkers do in the group?
They do all sorts of things, honestly. I mean, I think one benefit is that we're a real digital company. I would imagine most, if not all, of our employees are, on computers connected to networks, to these communication channels. And maybe that's a long way of saying that because of the reach that these Slack channels have throughout the company. I mean, I can talking to be, employees in St. Louis or employees in Australia. Who hold a variety of positions. I think I've tended to notice that some of the more engaged people in our community seem to be more on the visual, creative end of the company, but that really just could be pure happenstance. I don't know if that, but it's just such a broad variety of roles we perform. And at different stages too. Some of us are people like myself who identify as neurodivergent, and maybe have children. Some of us are parents with children. Some of us are just individuals who don't have family. There's a broad range of not just workers, but people. I think who identify with this group in one way or the other, or even allies that are coming together in this channel too. So it's a really broad cross section of people.
Is the Square open to any disability?
Yes, that is a key. I kind of feel like a key element of our design. I really look at neurodiversity as a very broad umbrella that covers. Almost anyone who thinks differently, anyone whose brain works differently. And that even applies to, in my mind. Maybe people like dwarves, or people who might have like a profound physical condition, because I think those perspectives quite often give you the same lens that we might have into folks with autism, or folks. When you have those differences in perspective, I really kind of want to be kind of like a lighthouse to people like that, to not only unite them, but to say, here's how we can, continue to. The company's on a specific journey right now. Here's how we can fit into that journey and even kind of replenish that journey in our direction along the way. That it helps us. It helps our families. It helps the kind of customers that we might relate to.
Now, I understand that you've, over the years of your career, developed a particular niche specialty. Could you
Sure.
tell our viewers about that?
Yes. So I specialize in something called equity compensation, which most companies pay their employees with cash. If you're on payroll, I'm getting a check. I'm getting a cash deposit in my bank account. But I think ever since corporations started, coming together and realizing that certain individuals in their company, be it the officers or executives, this is probably where this was concentrated around for a long period of time. But as more companies have grown, they said, how can we reward our employees? How can we kind of make them? How can we align their interests with our shareholders' interests? How can we align their interests, with the success of our company? And paying them in stock, which is something that does rise and fall in markets based on shareholder perspective, based on value of the company, is something that is a kind of a unique way of paying a worker. But it brings with it all sorts of those payments have to be held in certain kind of accounts. Sales of those shares have to be done in certain kinds of ways. if you're an employee who maybe knows too much about the company. Maybe you have information the public doesn't know. You can't go trading on the markets with that information. That's illegal. So there's all sorts of things that as a stock administrator, as someone who has to, all those things a company, they need a person who can facilitate all those things, who understands all that legal and accounting stuff. And I'm that guy. And so my specialty is understanding, those methods of payment, how to administrate them. Some of the pitfalls and traps along the way, because you really, you just want to keep everything running smoothly. If you experience a problem with your payroll, you're gonna really make a fuss about it real quick. Employees that receive any kind of problem here, a lot of it's just maintaining clockwork.
Camilla, I understand you have a few more questions.
Yes. Chris, I'd like to know how you got this job at Square. Was LinkedIn important to you?
Yes, LinkedIn was crucial. LinkedIn's a bit of a, it's almost like a professional Facebook, it's a digital business card, a snapshot of who you are. And I was able to really, I think, articulate quite well what my niche is, as we were talking about earlier, and my experience with that niche, in terms of, working at particular brokerage, service providers, and some of the companies I've provided these services for. But I think if, you can find a way to tell that story on LinkedIn, your professional story. What I found too lately is, even incorporating, that I'm a leader in this community, and telling my own, kind of adding a neurodiverse seasoning to that, has been so rewarding on LinkedIn as well. So I really encourage anyone using LinkedIn to use it to tell their personal and professional stories as compellingly as you can, because it'll almost more than it almost certainly will attract viewers who are interested in bringing those qualities to those companies that they're trying to hire for, things like that. So,
Chris, as we wrap up, what's next for the Neurodiversity Group there, one? And two, how can our viewers possibly get in touch with you to form their own neurodiversity groups where they may be working?
Sure. Well, what's next is, I really think with some of the events we've done a fantastic one with Steve Silverman and John Marble in mid-April. We had Esme Wang come and talk to our employers. She's got a great book on schizophrenia right now on the New York Times markets. But and just through other kind of dialogue sessions, community meetings we've had. I know we talked about that being a potential question earlier, but just all these things that we're doing right now kind of really bubble up the conversation. I think that's really what our group has done, and we've had a number of talks around this. But I think it's really time to take some of the energy that we've ignited, and take some of the awareness that we've created, and really use that to build more of a formal infrastructure around our community, and how we can implement our goals. In terms of who do we talk to create more welcoming environments at Square? Who do we talk to continue down this road of events and educating people? Who do we talk to about helping our neurodivergent customers out and building products that are better suited to their needs? There's just any number of items on our agenda, and I think a lot of that is just really slowly extending ourselves outward in every branch that would be valuable to help our community grow. How people can reach us if they're inclined to provide dialogue or insight or just want to connect is Square is a company on LinkedIn or on Twitter. There's all sorts of ways you can communicate with the company directly, but you can always find me in particular, and I can provide other members of my group to your community. I just want to get their confirmation I can do that. I'm confident I can, but you can reach me on LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm at Cosmic Karmic on Twitter. I'm at Chris Williams, CEP. That's my professional suffix on LinkedIn. I work for Square. I'm not that hard to find.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, Chris Williams. And now we'll be turning to Jennifer Brooks, our book correspondent.
Thank you, Keith. First, in honor of our friend Paul Nussbaum, who is currently hiking the Pacific Crest Trail through the High Sierras. I want to encourage everyone to read Sierra Club founder John Muir's book, My First Summer in the Sierras, about a journey he took through the Sierra Nevada mountains. And if you'd like to read more from John Muir, I recommend John Muir's Book of Animals. This is available at the gift shop at the Land's End Park in San Francisco, and it includes excerpts from John Muir's writings about various animals that he observed, and it includes some beautiful illustrations. And the subject of animals segues into the book I'd like to feature today, which is called The Animal School. This was written in either the 1930s or 1940s, no one seems to remember exactly when, by a very forward-thinking man named George Revis. It is now 80 years later, and this man is still far ahead of his time in his educational philosophy. The basic premise of the story is that a group of different animals get together to form a school, and their goal is to make all of the animals equally skilled in running, climbing, swimming, and flying. Problem is, it turns out that certain animals, because of their characteristics, have unfair advantages in certain areas. For example, the birds that have wings are more highly skilled in flying than the mammals and the reptiles that don't have wings. And the fish that live in the water and have adapted to that environment have turned out to be superior in swimming. So too is the duck with his webbed feet. And it just ends up being an absolute disaster. He wrote this as a warning for our public school system. I mean, yes, equality is good, but please don't take it too far. You're not going to socially construct everyone to be the best at everything. It's just not going to work. So please stop trying and focus on meeting the needs that kids actually have. And they should be encouraged to pursue whatever their natural talents are and to be the best that they can be with those particular things. And let other people handle the rest. You know, society needs all kinds of people to do all kinds of different jobs. And the goal, instead of, you know, trying to socially construct everyone to fit in everywhere, which has not worked and it's never going to work because human nature just doesn't work that way. It should be about helping each individual student find his or her place in the world, find where he or she is most likely to fit in, find what he or she does best, and then encourage him or her to contribute to society by doing whatever it is that he or she does best.
Well, folks, this is our program for this week. I want to again thank Chris Williams, and I'm Keith Halperin.
I'm Will Burnick.
I'm Camilla Bixler, and I would like to point out that Stacy Kennedy, our usual cultural correspondent, is away today, as is Matt McIntyre, our producer, and we look forward to having them back soon.
Very much so.
I'm Chris Williams. Thanks everyone for joining me.
And I'm Jennifer Brooks.
And until next time, we're Ascend TV live on the autism spectrum. Take care.